Candidates for 2 seats on the school committee. They are each 3-year terms. In order as they appear on the ballot is incumbent Thomas Wise, Laura Durgovich, and Dana Guarino. I will explain the rules that we will follow tonight in this forum. Each candidate will be invited to make an opening statement of no more than 2 minutes. And prior to this forum, we drew that order. All questions are of a non-personal nature and answerable by all candidates. At no point should a candidate ask questions of their fellow candidates. Candidates have 2 minutes to respond to each question. Additionally, each candidate will receive 2 opportunities for a rebuttal to be used during the course of the forum. These rebuttals are no more than 1 minute. You can use those at any time, but remember you only have 2. The timekeeper tonight is Liz Whitelum. She will display a green sheet at 60 seconds, a yellow sheet at 30 seconds, and a red sheet when it is time to stop. The moderator, myself, will alternate between our 2 questioners or interviewers tonight, and each candidate will be invited to make a 2-minute closing statement, and the order of those closings will be the same as at the opening. This event is open to the public. Welcome to those of you who are in the room. We are asking the audience to refrain from clapping, speaking, and asking questions. We only have an hour, so any time lost, background noise, is unfair to all the candidates and decreases the time we have to ask questions. Disruptions will receive 1 warning, but if there is a second, you may be asked to step outside the room. So at this time, I will welcome our candidates to do their opening statements, and we will begin with Ms. Durgovich.
Thank you. I'd like to start by saying thank you to the RDTC and the RRTC, as well as Jennifer, Marianne, and Jeffrey for organizing tonight's event. And I will begin by introducing myself. My name is Laura Durgovich, and I am a first-time candidate for one of the 3-year school committee seats. I've been a Reading resident for about 10 years, and my husband and I currently have 2 children in the Reading Public School System, a daughter at Parker and a son at Joshua Eaton. I also have a PhD in anthropology, and I have spent my entire professional career working in higher education as a lecturer and fellow at Harvard University, Tufts University, and Boston University. And I supplement that by doing a lot of science communication and outreach, educational outreach work. So I'm coming in as a passionate and experienced advocate for academic excellence, and I think that my background will really let me bring a valuable perspective to the school committee. Teaching has given me a lot of insight into the variables that affect student motivation and student performance. And as a school committee member, I will work to make sure that the learning environments that our students are in and the policies of the district really enable and encourage students to build the kinds of intellectual bridges across subjects and develop the kinds of practical skills that they need to succeed. I basically want students to want to learn. And so the school committee is crucial to supporting the investment and diversity that help our programs thrive. And I hope that you'll give me the opportunity to serve the students and the teachers and the broader community by helping our schools to continue to produce well-rounded, independent thinkers. Thank you.
Mr. Wise.
Thank you. I would also like to thank everybody who's helped coordinate this event and is helping to run it. So I'm not going to name names, because you've all been introduced. I am obviously Tom Wise, running for re-election. This would be my 3rd term. I originally ran back in 2019 and then ran again in 2022. I've been fortunate to be a member of the school committee over the last 6 years as we brought about what I believe to be a lot of positive change for our schools and the district in that time period. I've also been fortunate to have been elected by my peers as vice chair twice and as chair 3 times. Throughout that process, we've gone through the process of selecting a new superintendent. We've gone through process of building goals, updating policies, and driving positive change to the district. My role has been extensive, and what I've done has been extensive. For example, Many people know now that in the 2025-2026 school committee budget, we will be finally having tuition-free full-day kindergarten. I was the one who built the model to make that possible. Working with everybody in the administration, with the town, and others to build the model and ultimately get the school committee to vote for and approve that. I've done a lot of work with regards to our policies. With the committee, we created the policy subcommittee, and since then we have updated approximately at this point 40 to 45 different policies. Prior to that period, it had been a long time since policies have been updated. If you think about the school committee's role, it comes down to budget, it comes down to financials, and it comes down to goals. And we've used goals to drive improvement throughout the district as well. Many know that one of my primary focuses coming in was reading, and we've done a huge amount of work there, both in the regular day education program with the selection of the ARC program, and the training around that, not just rolling out a program, but rolling out training as well for our teachers. But then additionally, the support that we put into our special education programs in that space too. We were recently given a 95% score across the state.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Mr. Guarino.
First of all, I'd just like to thank everyone for setting this up. Appreciate the time, and I appreciate everyone coming out. I also want to thank Chuck Robinson for his 18 years as a school committee member. It's a lot of hard work, and appreciate all his work. My name is Dana Guarino. I grew up in this town. I actually went to Killam School, and this is a town that I loved growing up in. I was fostered a ton of education at that time. I recently had moved back into town with my daughter, who's now in 5th grade, who's here in the audience, and my twin sons, who are in 3rd grade. Sports were huge for me in this town, and it fostered this great team-building experience that helped me along throughout my life, and currently as my career through a physician assistant. I graduated from Springfield College and then got my master's in science at Mass College of Pharmacy. I've currently been working as a physician assistant in orthopedics for the last 16 years at a sports medicine practice. This town fostered so much in who I became and who I am today that it's time for me to give back. I think excellence is unbelievable. I think what the current school committee has done was awesome. To be able to then transform $5,000 a child for full-day kindergarten to now have free kindergarten. I think over the last 5 to 10 years, bringing up the scores at Joshua Eaton have been amazing. My goal, being on the school committee, if elected, would be to continue this excellence. I want to continue to foster this resilience, dedication, and want to learn, want to be better. I think if we really give these kids the opportunity to overcome their obstacles instead of taking them away, we'll give them the opportunity to be successful in life. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Downing.
Good evening. Reading Public School budget has grown 26% since 2020. And while that's been impressive and there's been a lot of positions added, with the budget constraints, especially some of those that have been alluded to in the earlier select board discussion, it may not be possible to continue that level of growth and new initiatives in the Reading Public Schools. Given the limited finances that we may be facing in the coming years, apart from the building of Killam, what would be your top 2 or 3 things that you would focus on to make the best use of the budget that we have without extensive increases?
We'll start with Mr. Wise.
It's not where I thought you were going with that question, so now I've got to kind of think my answer. Let me first say that yes, I do think we will be facing some tighter economic times coming forward. And one of the focus items that I've continued to have is achieving excellence sustainably. So we've done some process over the last few years to prepare ourselves for that. So for example, we instituted the Special Education Reserve Fund. And with town meeting's approval, and over the last couple of years, we've been adding funds to that to prepare for the rainy day, for lack of a better way to say it. But in terms of other things that I would invest in over the next couple of years, we've talked about full-day Fridays as one item, and that is approximately $250,000 to $300,000 a year to make that happen. Now, considering where we came from with full-day kindergarten, where it was about 900 to 1.2 million, is it possible to build a model to do that? Maybe. With that said, I don't know that that's necessarily what my focus would be. I think the focus has to continue to be to strengthen our internal special education programs even more. We've done a lot over the last few years to what I call invest to save, and we've seen evidence of that, whereby a lot of our out-of-district spending is going down and a lot of our in-district spending is going up. Which helps to provide ways that we can actually educate our students in district. It actually is a revenue-producing proposition as well. We have seen some out-of-district students want to come for our LEAD program as an example, which produces some money to support that program. So I think that would be my continued focus, is how do we build in more for our special education programs to make them even better than they are right now, and support that more fully as an invest to save process. So not an invest just to invest, but to save.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Ms. Durgovich?
Thank you. I will start by saying that I have a lot of experience as someone who spent almost a decade in grad school learning how to stretch a dollar. And so I think that even when budget conditions are tight, with Creative Solutions, there are a lot of ways to continue to support the students that we have and to continue to challenge all of them to meet them where they're at, to be able to not just address the needs of kids in special education, to address the needs of kids who are maybe a little bit ahead of the curve. And so I think the budget priorities that I would have would be to continue to focus on curriculum, and especially to continue to listen to what the teachers have to say about the curricular resources that they have and which ones are the biggest bang for your buck. I was talking to some elementary school teachers yesterday, and they were saying that one of the things that they really feel strongly about is that they would like to have more people who are working directly with the students. So have additional interventionists available for math, for reading specialists. And so I would really want to invest in the personnel of the schools and be able to use that investment to address all the students' needs. I think that sometimes there can be excessive funding spent on aspects of technology. It would be really nice to get a little bit back to some more pencil and paper in the classroom, especially in the elementary schools. But I think that really the best way to understand how to spend the money effectively is to rely on what the teachers have to say and to foster a positive relationship between the teachers and the school committee and the administration, so that there are open lines of communication there, so that everyone has a solid understanding of what is needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Guarino?
Oh, thank you. So I would like to agree that with the budget going up, inflation going up, over this last year, it looks like it went up only 3% because we had hired teachers at a lower level and some teachers had left. But yes, with an increasing budget, with inflation, where would we put that money? Well, if you look through some of where we put our money, we can actually see some of the returns. When you look at the MEDCO program and the special education program, we've actually invested money into that and we've seen returns on that. One return in particular, when we were looking at the math scores at Coolidge and Parker, we ended up having math teachers and people that were helping this year. Now those scores are now equaling out. I mean, we've invested money in the right places, and you can see that with our objective data. We've also invested great money with the MEDCO students. So we have a grant now that we applied for. So now if kids that are rising 6th, 7th graders going into 8th grade are struggling to be on that math level to then to be on geometry and take algebra in 8th grade, we've actually allowed kids and applied for grants to help those MEDCO students over the summer programs. So continuing to apply for grants, continuing to look into where we can help the kids that are going to benefit. not just the special education program, but everyone as a whole. Yes, one of my sons is a traditional learner, and one of my sons is on an IEP program, but I think everyone can flourish, and as long as we are continuing to stretch a dollar, I think everything will go well over the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Coram?
Thank you. There are discussions nationwide about cell phones in school. Policies range from phones being secured and inaccessible during the day to being allowed at lunch and for certain classroom activities. What are your thoughts, and how would you help solicit input from parents, students, teachers, and administrators as to help develop a policy for Reading Public Schools?
Mr. Guarino?
Oh, okay. So, thank you. So first of all, we would have to talk to teachers. As of right now, it looks like when you look at the policy for Parker and Coolidge, they are different than the high school. When you look at Parker and Coolidge, those cell phones or smartwatches need to be locked up in your locker during school hours. In the high school, looking at the handbook, it's somewhat vague where it says it's up to the teacher discretion in how it's used appropriately, whether it's voice recording or taking photos. Now, I do think we would have to take into consideration parents, kids, administration. I don't think it needs to be a one for everyone, for elementary, middle school, and high school. I think we can adjust things for age appropriateness. So at this point, I think they're doing the right things in the middle school. I think we would have to talk to everyone, send out a survey. The high school students that feel that it's necessary to have a phone, I've heard from parents that it's more of a safety. So if something was going wrong, they felt like their phone was there for safety and they could make phone calls, and I understand that. I do think it's a good idea to have time away from screen time. And so I don't know how it would work. I don't know if when you're going into a classroom, you can say, here's my phone, it's shut off, and when you leave the classroom, you have it, and then you make it accessible during lunch or in between when you're going to classes. But I think having it off during class time is something that should be a rule, or could be a hard stop rule where you're not being distracted. These kids in high school are very easily distracted, and I think that that's one more distraction, especially with social media being so accessible to kids everywhere, that I think having it off during learning time is what needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wise?
So this is a topic I think we started talking about. And if I understand the question correctly, it's gathering input and then figuring out what to do with it, right? So I think we'd follow a very similar process to what we've followed in the past, both for our math pathways and our reading and writing process. We built advisory committees of parents, teachers, and administrators, and invited pretty much anybody that wanted to join, in many cases, into those advisory committees. Surveys and sending out like a quick survey to get feedback, that sometimes works, but oftentimes there's more noise than there is signal. And so working through that can be a challenge. What we've found so far is that engaging those that are passionate, educated, and want to learn about it helps form a best approach. And so I would think that that's where we're going to start. Now, this is a K through 12 issue. The previous ones had different levels of concern, so we'd have to make sure we consider every angle and every point of input. My inclination, somewhat similar to Dana, is we don't need cell phones at all in our elementary schools. I know that some people started introducing it in 5th grade, some people even gone back to 4th grade and started introducing it. That's a parent-based decision, so I want to sort of figure out how to manage the parent-based decisions in alignment with the education-based decisions. As we go up through middle school, I do think the Parker and Coolidge related ones are appropriate. I can't believe I've already got a minute and 30 seconds in. So we have to work through it overall to get it right. There are other elements that we have to consider. while we are pretty good from a one-to-one perspective on our computers, there are special education needs at times to use a cell phone for voice to text or other type of accommodations as well. So there's a lot of angles to consider. We have heard from other districts that removing it from the classroom is helpful. So we have to figure out how best to accommodate that.
Ms. Durkovich.
Thank you.
Thank you. I strongly believe that there's really not very many good reasons for kids to have their cell phones in the classrooms. I think that with the exception of the safety concerns that Dana mentioned, which are sadly still very legitimate in America, and with the exception of some of the special needs considerations like taking them through voice recording, there really isn't a reason for them to be in the classroom. So I like the policies at Parker and Coolidge that they have to be locked up in the locker. The students still can have them at school. They don't go into FOMO mode too much. But I think that from an educational perspective, they're really just a distraction. And so I would want to hear from parents and from students in terms of their opinions on this matter, but I'm also a very research-based person that comes from my background in academia. When I want to know about a topic, I hate the literature. And so what I would also want to do as a school committee member, and presumably in the context of some special subcommittee, would be to really look at what the data say about what happens when you have cell phones in the classroom versus what happens if you ban them from the schools entirely versus what happens if you take some sort of intermediate stance. I think that having the data to rely on that shows here's how this might affect test scores, here's how this might affect attendance, here's how this might affect the degree of how much kids are paying attention in the classroom, really is a powerful way to help shape policy. And so I would want to point to what is known empirically about that data in order to inform and supplement the opinions that we get from the students and teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. A rebuttal?
Ask them to turn the mics down in the room. It's echoing really bad. Is there somebody who controls it?
Say that, no.
The mics are echoing. Is there a way to turn them down?
Rob, could you do us a favor and go back to the library?
If not, I mean, if we can't control it, that's fine. But if there was an easy control.
Did Dana answer?
Why don't you continue on the investigation?
Okay. Ms. Downing?
Well, seeing how we're on the topic of tech, let's talk AI. AI has become adopted in business and even colleges, faster than anything I've ever seen. I hear it's faster than the adoption of the internet 20 years ago. And I think many think it presents both a challenge and an opportunity in education. What are your views on the use of AI in a school environment, not only by students, but by teachers? And do you think that there's a way to get our students ready for the AI revolution?
Ms. Durkovich?
Thank you. I have very strong opinions about AI in an educational setting, and most of those are informed by the fact that I do teach in higher ed, and higher ed has seen the adoption and inclusion of a lot of these AI tools, things like ChatGPT, much faster than they've been appearing, I think, in the K-12 system. And I can say from firsthand experience that they really are causing a lot of chaos in the world of higher ed because they are so unproven and untested and in many ways flawed. And students are not necessarily well informed on how to use them, and faculty are not necessarily figured out ways to incorporate them in the least harmful manner. So I do think that the use of AI and the ChatGPT kinds of programs in particular is a growing problem and will continue to be a growing problem. I think it is having significant impacts on the way that students learn to do research and learn how to write. I should say significant negative impacts in that regard. And I also think that people just don't understand the technology very well when they go to use it. So I was looking at a story story today, the Columbia Journalism Review found that AI models cite sources incorrectly 60% of the time. And so I have students turn in papers and they'll have a sentence with a citation, and I'll go to look up the citation, and it's a paper that doesn't exist. It's something that AI has just made up out of whole cloth. And so I think that it's going to be really important in the next several years for the school committee to come up with some firm policies about AI, not necessarily banning it entirely, but really thinking carefully about the context in which it is incorporated and trying to find ways to creatively apply it so that it can enhance education rather than eliminating it.
Thank you. Mr. Guarino.
Thank you. So I would agree that I think as we move forward over the next few years, that AI is going to be a huge part of growing in education, for good or for bad. You know, when we think about the internet and when people were researching the internet, you know, it came and now we have it. AI, when we were just at the Museum of Science on a field trip, we were able to show the kids how there's a robot dog and you can go up and all these good things that AI does have to bring. I think over the next few years, we should realize that AI is going to be around. We need to explain to the kids and we need to make committee rules about how it can be used. I don't think it should be used as to write your paper. I don't think it should be used in those ways because that's cheating, right? So as we go along, we teach our kids how to do math, right? Algebra, geometry, basic math. We know that after they leave high school, they're going to use calculators, right? But we show them their basics. I think if we don't do that and we don't put a stop to saying, hey, this isn't appropriate right now, we're going to use it as something to enhance your knowledge and help with research and help with things, then I think it can be a slippery slope, and moving forward, you'll see kids putting into ChatGPT, hey, can you write me a paper on Tale of Two Cities? Hey, can you write me a paper on great books, right? And unless you have a professor or a teacher who is going to read through and make sure everything is cited correctly, it is going to be a lot of work on teachers too. So I do think this is going to be a slippery slope. I do think, I don't have a perfect answer of how this is going to play out moving forward, but I do think subcommittees and the committee of the school committee does need to make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guarino. Mr. Wise.
So, as luck would have it, during our offsite in August, this was a topic of discussion. Jess Bailey asked us, who is the head of the RTA, asked us to talk about this while we were at the offsite in particular, and figure out what we wanted to do and how we wanted to move things forward. We used that time to essentially have ChatGPT create a field trip for us on the way down to Boston, right? So there are various ways to use it, and it's not just a kid versus teacher thing. It's a how do we use it and how do we leverage it, right? There are definitely issues with it. It's not perfect in any way, shape, or form. But just as the use of the internet was 30 years ago, 35 years ago, you know, a new thing, AI is that new thing now. So we can't ignore it, right? I would say a couple of things. Yes, there's a policy type impact that has to come out of this and work through it. Somewhat similarly, again, in an advisory committee type thing. There's a plus, there's a minus. Here are the guardrails in terms of how we expect it to be used, what the expectations are from an academic perspective, what the expectations are from a teacher perspective. I would also say that we probably should start working with one of our partners from a higher ed perspective to build a dual enrollment type course on AI in one of our innovation pathway tracks, especially our engineering and innovation pathway. Those kids that are interested in computer programming and that kind of functionality need to know this from a this is the skill that's going to be there. So building that into a curriculum might also be a step that we want to take in this process too. So policy, both for students and teachers, not just students, building it in as a course to build the skill set as well, and acknowledge as part of that course, here are the negatives and here are the positives, and when and how you can and should use it.
Thank you. Mr. Coram?
The Reading Public Schools mailed out the 2024 Community Report to every household in Reading. What did you find most interesting in that report? Or if you didn't read it, how should school committee members improve access to information for residents, not just parents, about the school system and the school committee?
Mr. Wise?
I read it. I wrote the intro. I hope people found it beneficial. I have received multiple people sending texts saying, thank you, we didn't have this before, it's great. So I hope people, and those people aren't connected to the schools anymore. So that's one of the intents. This has been a question for years, this particular question, but now we have evidence to show that it's working. So thank you for bringing that as well. I love it from a perspective of what we're trying to show, right? Reading and the Reading Public Schools are a crown jewel of Reading, and we're really trying to demonstrate all the good work that's happening. The focus is on excellence. The focus is on excellence in every one of the school committee meetings. The focus is on excellence in administration and in teaching and in student execution, and we're showing that, right? And we're celebrating that. This is just one case of that. So I hope those people who have a chance to see it are appreciating that. And we do send it to every address in the town. So it goes to everybody. And it's a relatively small expense, about $5,000 or $6,000, right? It's not chump change, but it's relatively small expense. The administration does a great job pulling it together, and the volunteers who help with the pictures and the layout do a great job as well. So I thank those volunteers. They know who they are. And whatnot. In terms of other things that we can do, I would love to see us do a little bit more promotion around our high school related activities and our middle school related activities. I know we do some, and I know mostly done by parent volunteers, but I'd love to see more publication around that. You know, I'd love to see even more happening at football games and it become a town event for a football game or a basketball game, or, you know, I'd love to see even more attendance at some of our performing arts things. We have pretty high attendance overall, but I'd love to see even more. So what can we do to push that with some other sub-mailing would be one of the things I'd like to see an improvement in.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Mr. Guarino?
Thank you. Yes, so when you read through this and you actually can see how excellent the school system is, you can see all these progressive changes that have happened. You are proud to be living in this town, right? You get to see everything that's happening. And having grown up here, there was such a pride to live here, right? You know, I never wanted to go to private school. It was always like, yeah, I'm going to be a Rocket, right? That's what I'm going to play football. And so when you see these flyers that come to your house, you're like, wow, this is, it almost feels like back in the day where you have this pride of being in this town. You get to see the excellence and you get to see everything moving forward. I do have to agree with Tom. I would love to see a little bit more athletics out there. I'd love to see some of even the elementary school that made it to the championships. I'd love to see the middle school. I'd love to see more of that, you know, unity as a community come together. That's what I'd like to see more of. How can we do that? Sending everything by mail is awesome. Having a world where everything is social media driven, even though I'm more of someone that likes a hard copy, I think can help. Sending everything through social media, Facebook, Instagram, et cetera. I think that's going to help build the community and bring people together even more. But yes, that would be one of the things I'd love to be added into that, would be a little bit more of the sports avenue and seeing the success of even our elementary school, middle school children as they proceed with basketball, football, even the artwork. You know, it was great to see that my daughter is doing art and you get to go to RMLD and, you know, go through that whole thing. I mean, that's awesome. That's successful. That's what we want to breed in this town. And that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Ms. Durgovich?
Could you just repeat the end of the question? It was, we all received the packet and
How can school committee members improve access for residents, not just parents, to information about the school system and the school committee?
perfect. Thank you. Well, I received it, as did everyone else apparently, and I read it cover to cover, and I loved it. I actually, so thank you for putting it together. It was a really great resource and summary of where the schools stand right now. There were several things that stood out to me about the community report in particular. One is that it's probably really beneficial for educating people, especially those who don't currently have students in the school system, about some of the improvements and progress that we've made and some of the changes that have been implemented. People, although without students, might not know about the innovation pathways. They might not know about the dual enrollment program or the internship program. I learned that they're introducing district-wide composting, which I'm thrilled about because that's really logically friendly. I also think it was great that it highlighted both academic and athletic and artistic achievements. I think especially even for those people who do have students in the schools, if your kid is an athlete but not involved in the arts, you don't necessarily know what's going on the other side of that, and vice versa. And so, it's great for the athletic parents to learn that the high school had back-to-back state championships, and it's great for the arts parents to learn about some of the athletic accomplishments of the students. And it's great to be able to point to the academic progress, such as the fact that Parker got recognized as a school of recognition by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So I think it's a fantastic resource. I agree that social media is probably a great way to expand that. And also, I think about the regular communications I get from the schools that my students are in. So we get the Jaguar tracks from JE every week. We get the Parker Post every week. We're not at the high school yet, so I don't know whether they have a similar kind of weekly communication that goes out to all the parents. But I look at that every week and I read that, and I think it might be worthwhile to think about if there are ways that you could get that kind of more regular communication out to non-parents as well, so that they can appreciate those kinds of accomplishments. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Downing?
Okay, we're going to go a little more lighthearted. If you could teach any grade or class in Reading Public Schools, which one would it be and why? And try to explain in not too many sentences because we're running out of time.
Mr. Guarino?
Okay. So my favorite class to teach would be 8th grade math. And the reason why it would be my favorite class to teach, one, I love science. I love math, right? That's English, humanities is not my strong suit, right? That's why I went into medicine, because there's objective data, you get to a concrete answer, there's no other way to do it. This is the answer, and you either get there or you don't. You can show your work, but I'd love to have some concrete answers. The reason why I would pick 8th grade math, having gone to Coolidge, having not been on the advanced math pathway and been in the basic algebra at that time, when we had it at that time, I had an awesome teacher. I shouldn't say a teacher, he was a vice principal at the time, who then helped me so I could then be on a higher pathway of math moving forward. So for me, that holds a lot. I wasn't on the high track in math, and so if I was taking that test in 6th grade now to be on the high level or the low level, I would have probably been on the low level, and I was at that time. So 8th grade math would be the math I would teach. I love objective data, I love science, and it holds a special place for me because of someone that actually helped me through it so I could be on a higher track moving into geometry into the high school. Thank you.
Ms. Durkovich?
Well, the easy answer here would be for me to say that I would teach some sort of science class because that's what I do in higher ed, and so I have a lot of experience doing it. But I actually don't think that's what I would do because I do that already. And so I think if I had the opportunity to teach something in one of the Reading Public Schools, as much as I would like to say that I would have fun with the elementary school students, I do not have the fortitude of those teachers and who I admire immensely. And so what I think I would probably say is that I would want to teach an English class at either the middle or high school levels. When I was in
an undergraduate student at Tufts. I studied anthropology as my major, but I did an English minor. And I really love engaging with both writing and literature. And my daughter is in 7th grade right now, and I listen to her talk about the kinds of sources that they're looking at in their English class, and interestingly, the kinds of interdisciplinary things that they're looking at, where they'll read something about science, but then they'll write about it, or they'll read something about the arts. They're talking about Diego Rivera in her class right now, and they're going to write about it. And so I think that either at the middle or high school level, I really love the opportunity to get kids excited about reading and get kids excited about writing, and be able to use creative kinds of assignments to engage them in ways that will make that memorable for them. When I was in high school, I took AP Lit, and we read Dante's Inferno, and I have incredibly fond memories of reading Dante's Inferno because it was such a wonderfully taught book for me. And so I would like to be able to give another student that experience of saying, oh my gosh, I just connected with this material so well that I didn't really necessarily think I would be interested in, but the teacher was able to generate this kind of enthusiasm. Thank you.
Mr. Wise.
You're not getting your shorter answers than you thought you would get. I'm going to cheat and say 2 answers. And so it's not going to be short either. But my first answer is the one that somewhat, like Laura, aligns to my career. I would actually create a class at the high school for data analytics. I think we're missing that focus at the high school, and that is another huge area of growth in the overall industry space. Data is the new oil, for lack of a better way to put it. And teaching or creating a course and then teaching that course for, say, 11th or 12th graders, I think would be something that would be a lot of fun. Going the opposite direction, many people know reading is my passion. So I would love to have the chance to be a K1 or 2 teacher teaching kids how to read. You know, the work that happens there, the way that the little minds form, and the scientific way in which you can outline that, and there is a right or wrong way to do it, that leads towards the highest level of execution and achievement. Those are the 2 things that I've been looking at, and it's a little bit shorter answer, so there you go.
Mr. Coram.
At a recent school committee meeting, the superintendent mentioned the concept of deeper learning, where students have more of an intrinsic motivation to learn something, not so much cramming for the test. So how can you help Reading Public Schools improve opportunities for deeper learning, and does the elimination of the MCAS requirement open up some opportunities in that vein?
Ms. Durkovich.
Thank you. I think it's fantastic that we are going to have increased opportunities to move away from points to tests. I think that tests can be a useful way to monitor progress at the level of an entire school, but I think that they also can be very misleading in terms of the kinds of data that they represent. So as far as deeper learning goes, I will answer that with something that I do in some of my classes at the higher level, which is I have often introduced an assignment called an unessay, which is becoming increasingly popular in higher ed. And it is an open-ended assignment that lets students take a topic that they're interested in that's related to the course material and come up with some kind of innovative project and way to explore it. And I have gotten the most amazing assignments turned in from students. I've had students record podcasts, I've had students make videos, I've had students produce amazing artwork. I had a student who talked about the evolution of tool use in humans and did so in conjunction with making a series of videos where she was knitting. It really is a way to let the students find a way to connect with the material on a more personal level that, again, helps them remember it, increases retention, increases enthusiasm. And so I would love to see some of those kinds of more creative assignments make space for those kinds of assignments that are not traditional in terms of you're going to write a paper and that's going to show me what you learned, you're going to take a test and that's going to show me what you learned, but to be able to have the students say, this is why this material matters to me. Thank you.
Mr. Wise.
This one's a little bit of an interesting one for me, I think. First of all, knowing where we were and what we were doing, I don't know that we were teaching to a test at all. I don't think that was ever the intent, so I'll just put that to the side. But from a deeper learning perspective, so I don't think that was ever a blockage of deeper learning. I'll put it that way, right? Deeper learning to me, and you're the anthropologist, so you could tell me otherwise, I think it comes down to passion. Like, what do you really care about, right? If you care about a subject, you are going to dive deep into that subject. And you're going to, study, you're going to research, you're going to dig, and you're going to dig, and you're going to dig until you can't go further, right? So for an example, I cared about dyslexia, and I kept digging and digging and digging and digging, right? And that led to a ton of knowledge and understanding. So the question is, how do you unlock that passion for a child? Really is what it comes down to. And I'm going to go back to, how do you support the teachers to unlock that passion? So from a school committee perspective, coming back to our roles, policy, goals, finance, and budget, it's a question of how do we enable the appropriate training for our teachers to open up that passion and to enable them to bring out the interests. There are some things going on at the high school called Modern Classroom. In some cases, it's working really well. In other cases, it's a struggle. And a lot of that comes down to teacher education and teacher training. We've done some really good stuff in the middle school and the elementary school with regards to job shadowing and learning in the classroom for our teachers that is unlocking some things. And we need to do more of that enables the teachers to learn from other teachers so that they can then open up that passion for the students. When the passion's there, the deeper learning will be there.
Thank you. Mr. Guarino?
So I actually think over the last few years, the high school has done a really good job with deeper learning. Having gone through the high school growing up, some of these innovation pathways, actually all of them were not there. And so it was a struggle to go through classes where, like Tom was saying, you didn't have that passion. You were struggling because you honestly that wasn't where your passion was. That wasn't where your heart lied. Your heart was in science. You wanted to be in medicine, and you knew that from a young age. So with this deeper learning, I agree that when you have passion and you have a commitment and you want to dig deep into that, that's what's going to drive you. That's what drives people even in their collegiate careers, right? I mean, so when you think about college, you say, okay, these are the classes you have to take to graduate. Even if you're a freshman in college, you say, okay, I got to take these mandatory classes to graduate from this college. Whether you love those classes or not, a lot of the times, if those are classes where you say, I just have to take them, you're not putting your effort into it. So when you talk about deeper learning, these pathways that they just got this, you can do a gross dissection without grossly dissecting a human body. That is the deeper learning, right? I mean, this is awesome. These kids that are going to be on that medical pathway or they want to be on the engineering pathway, we're doing it. And I honestly do think that we are putting the money and the resources into the kids at the high school so they can dive deep into what they see themselves 5, 10 years down the road. And they're learning about it now because they're so passionate about it. And so I think we're doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Downing?
I didn't know we had, all right, this is the shortest question on my list, and I will insist on short answers. What are 3 words you would use to describe Reading Public Schools?
Mr. Guarino?
So 3 words that I would describe the Reading Public School System in would be resilient, passionate, and honorable. Those are the 3 words. Thank you.
Thank you.
You did it.
Mr. Wise?
It's my campaign slogan, achieving excellence sustainably.
Ms. Durkovich?
I'm going to go with welcoming, rigorous, and fun.
Excellent. We are close to the time, so that was our last question. We will move on to the closing statements, and it will be the same order as we opened. So Ms. Durgovich, we will start with you.
Well, again, let me start by saying thank you to all the organizers of this evening's forum and to my fellow candidates for coming and sharing all of our thoughts together. I decided to run for school committee because as a Reading parent and resident, I have a very strong vested interest in the success of our schools and in the success of all of our students. So the current school committee, I believe, has a very strong working relationship both internally as well as with the district administration, and they have shown, especially over the past few years, that they have an excellent track record of collaborating to achieve important goals like tuition-free kindergarten. So what I really hope is that my answers this evening have persuaded you that I would be able to come into the school committee and be both a productive and creative member and to continue to contribute to that record of success. I think in particular my background as an educator will let me bring a valuable perspective to the table that's not currently present. And my background as a scientist means that all of the decisions that I make, be it about curriculum or policy, will always be based on evidence and not intuition. And so I would just like to say thank you again and ask you to please consider casting a vote for Lara Durgovich for school committee either before or on April 8th. Thank you so much.
Mr. Wise?
I'll extend the thanks as well, and to the audience who showed up and is happy smiley faces out there. I go back to my why from 6 years ago, and the why is still there, right? My why was I wanted to help improve the district and make it stronger and better. We've done a lot of that, but we're not done, right? There's a lot of things to be proud of over the last 6 years, both personally and across the committee and across the district, but we're not done yet. My commitment is as strong as it has ever been. Despite a lot of work hours, my commitment is very strong. We continue to work through policies, we continue to work through financial challenges, we continue to work in partnership with the district and in partnership with all the unions. Another recent example would be our union negotiations. We are one of the few districts around that did not have a threat of a strike. And that was resulting from the committee, Dr. Milczewski, and all the unions working together. That is what Reading is what we do. And I built the models to make that possible. I thank the Finance Committee members here as well that helped us with that too. All of that was done in a sustainable fashion and with the focus of multi-year financial forecasts and how we could build it into the forecast. All of it was done in transparency with the unions so they could make it happen. We have a track record of getting things done, and I want to continue that track record. And I hope that over the last 6 years, I've earned your vote for this next election, and hopefully tonight I've solidified that even further. If you have any further questions, you can call me, or you can look me up on wiseforreadingma.org, and you can see the rest of my platform there as well. Thank you.
Mr. Guarino?
In closing, I'd like to thank everyone for setting this up. I'd like to thank my family who has supported me and everyone else around me. I can't list all the names of all the help. So in closing, I grew up in this town. This is a town where I am going to be. This is where my family will be. Everything about this town has made me who I am. And this is where I would like to give back to this town, to see the next generation be successful and succeed. Continue to push for excellence. Every time, you're never going to get, you might always get 100, right? But when you have great teachers, when you have great support, and when you have a great superintendent from higher up down, giving support to the students, that's what we need moving forward. Failure's inevitable, right? It's how you get yourself back up off the ground, right? I hope I've earned your trust this evening. I hope I earned your vote in April. What I'm going to bring is someone who can collaborate and listen to other ideas. Having worked in medicine for 20 years, I've come to the conclusion very early on that we are constantly learning, right? Medicine is constantly evolving. A surgery that you did 15 years ago with postoperative course medicine and prophylaxis is different than it is now. And so, just like AI and the internet, we are constantly going to evolve, and we're going to have to constantly be making decisions moving forward. I'd like to think that I'd be a part of those decisions. I'd like to think that I know I'm not always going to make the perfect answer or say the perfect thing that's going to make everybody happy, but you are always going to get someone who's honest, trustworthy, and dedicated to serve the people and the kids in this great community that I grew up in. Please come out and vote in April 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Alvarado? Mr. Bergstrom?
Thanks again to all candidates who generously offered their time to step up and run for local office. To all the volunteers who joined us here this evening, along with RCTV for airing Forum Live. And lastly to Eric and the Reading Republican Town Committee for co-hosting today's board.
And likewise, my thanks to Vanessa and the Reading Democratic Town Committee for partnering with us on this event. And as a final reminder, you can vote early during Town Hall business hours from March 29th to April 4th, and in person on Election Day on Tuesday, April 8th at the RMHS Fieldhouse from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So please mark your calendar right now. Thanks for tuning in, Reading.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.